Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Renee Greenfield. I have the honor and pleasure of leading this amazing school, and I also have the pleasure of welcoming you here this afternoon. I'm going to pass it to Sue next, and then the stars of the show are here on the main stage. So before we welcome them, I just want to start with a story about, actually I'm going to tell the same story I told people in the morning. These people haven't heard it. I think it's important, right? Okay, so I'm going to tell you the story, because they already heard it. A lot of people know that when I meet them or see them, I say, tell me something good. So I've been doing that for like kind of a long time. Thought it was like a great thing. My linear brain, tell me something good. Because you know, like oftentimes you can get stuck in the negative and how's your day? Trying to bring people up. So a couple weeks ago I was here at the lower school and I offer this story for you to picture these people in younger versions, okay? So I saw a young student here at Carroll, and I approached her and I said, tell me something good. And they were like, she's like, good or great? And I was like, oh, great, tell me something great. And then she went on and regaled me with, I actually don't remember because I was so taken in that moment. So now I've shifted my practice. Tell me something great. And I think you're going to share a bunch today about how your life has been great, not good. Serious, okay? And we're really excited to hear your stories. And just so grateful that you're here. So thank you. Over to Sue Kingman.
Can we give him a round of applause? So, for those of you who've had the benefit of sitting in front of a group of alumni in the past, it is always a home run. For all of us, we always put our alumni in front of our new teachers because the stories are so compelling. And we want to make sure that we have all of that sense of hope and encouragement and impact. The impact is huge. How many alumni come back to their elementary and middle school experiences and talk about their story? So the impact of Carroll carries on for a lifetime. And so I was so thrilled that we were able to do this and be able to have you hear some of these stories, because for parents out there, many of you have been in a position in your previous school environments where you haven't heard the most positive messaging about your child. Some of you have been in a situation where you've heard things that we hate to hear about our children at Carroll, but you've heard it. Things like, child will never be an independent reader, will always need assistive technology. You might want to think about an alternative path different from college. So those experiences and messages you've had, what I want you to do for the parents out there is to just sit back and try to replace those messages with encouragement and hope. And these folks are here to do that for you. And as I think about the educators, all you teachers out there in the group, your work comes alive in these stories. Doesn't feel that way when you're a 4th and 5th grade teacher and you're slogging through trying to help them to write a complete sentence. But your work comes through. And reliably, when we talk to our alumni, they say the single most influential experience on their Carroll journey were their teachers. So I'm going to speak for our friends here and have me say thank you for that. So sit back and enjoy the stories, because you had a part in these stories. Maybe not these particular humans, but these stories. Alright, so this is what we're going to do. I have a whole list of questions. We're going to be pretty informal, kind of a cozy group, that I'm going to pose to our esteemed friends here. And they're going to choose whether they want to answer the question or not. And we're just going to hear different perspectives of the Carroll impact, where they've been, what they've been doing, where they are now, and just get to know kind of the range of directions that our Carroll alum go, because it's wide and broad. And then we'll have an opportunity for you all to ask questions. I'm going to ask that you hold off on asking questions until the end. We'll have a chance to do that. And then again, at the very end, we'll just break and there can be a lot of informality about just approaching folks and just asking specific questions if you have them. All good? All right. So we're going to get started. So we're going to go in order for our introductions. So we're going to start here with David, who will just share us a little bit about when you came to Carroll, where you went to after Carroll, and what you're doing now.
My name is David Zampese. I came to Carroll from 1983 to 1985, which is, I think, I'm close to being the oldest now. I'm clearly the oldest in this room. I went to the middle school. I know for the doctor asked, tell me something great. And I will say the Carroll School is what's great. I've had a great life up to this point, but I didn't before coming to the Carroll School. Much of the things you heard about your child it was said about myself as a kid, and I wouldn't really do much in life, and really didn't have much intelligence, which my parents thought was very, very wrong. But I can assure you the things that go on in the school and the teachers and how much they open up these kids' minds, open up my mind, is what's made my life great. So thank you.
My name is Sam Brody. I attended Carroll from 1996 to 2000. 1990 to 96. I then went on to the Dublin School in New Hampshire, and I transferred from there back to Boston, realizing I was going to go off to college and not spend as much time at home with my family, with my friends, and I graduated from Beaver Country Day School, went off to the College of Worcester, and somehow found my way into education. I think if you asked me, all through school, if I would ever go work in education, I would laugh at you. School is not a good place. Even Carroll was amazing, but it was still, a lot of hard times, and I never thought that I would get back in education. And I'm now I'm a school counselor at the middle school at Carroll up on the Lincoln campus.
My name's Dave Bamforth. I graduated Carroll in 2011, and I was there from 2nd grade through 8th grade. I cannot do the math to figure out what year I started. After Carroll, I went to Proctor Academy in Andover, New Hampshire, boarding school. And then I went to Wentworth Institute of Technology and got a degree in mechanical engineering and a minor in manufacturing. And I now run a business that manufactures parts for the automotive industry and working our way into aerospace and a few other industries, and mostly machined and 3D printed parts. And then I have another company that does collector car storage and management. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sonia. I graduated Carroll in 2009, and I was here, I think, 3rd grade through 8th grade, but never on this property. After Carroll, I went to Beaver Country Day as well, and then I went to the University of Denver. Realized during school that my life was never going to be sitting behind a desk. Did enough of that until we graduated college, and worked in hospitality for the Four Seasons for 5 years, moved to Jackson, Wyoming, opened my own sourdough baking business, and as of June, I live in Portland, Maine, and I am still in hospitality and a head chef and a events coordinator. And yeah, I'm so thankful to be here and would not be where I am today without Carroll, that is for sure.
Hello, my name is Michael Murphy. I graduated in 2008, 2009, same with Sonia. I started in 2004 in 4th grade, and it was the biggest change. When you come to Carroll, you don't realize your potential until you're at Carroll, and it's amazing what they're able to bring out of you. It's truly amazing. After I graduated Carroll, I went to Westford Academy, so I went back into the public schools. And Carroll gives you those techniques that you can be in a school where there's not as much support, and they give you the advocacy skills. That was a close one, but not right. So they give you those skills so that you can go to your teachers and go to your counselors and ask, hey, I need more time on this test. I can't spell, so I need the computer to help me with spell check. And so that's huge when you learn that. I graduated Westford Academy and went to High Point University and then transferred to Lesley University. And Lesley has a program with, well, they used to, I don't know if they have it anymore, but they had a program where they would take education students and they would bring them into the school. And they would teach classes with some of the teachers, and specifically Steve Wilkins. And I don't see her here, but Miss M was she took over Steve Wilkins' class, and it was amazing to see a student come in and kind of take over the class and really teach us how to work through that. And the last thing I want to say is about the greatness is Carroll does bring out the greatness in us, and it's amazing how that happens. And Sonia and I were lucky enough to be part of Breaking Through, which I believe they just revamped. And that we were able to tour Massachusetts and go to conferences and fundraisers and actually show what dyslexia is and how it is. And one other great thing about dyslexia that many people don't know is dyslexics are able to see 3D in their brain. So if you ask them to see a room, they're in the room. They're not viewing the room like a TV. So it's amazing to be able to go in your mind and go into a space and be in the space, not be viewing it from a computer or a TV screen. So that's the biggest thing I've recently learned about dyslexia is we can see in 3D in our brain, which is different than non-dyslexic. So that's one of our other strengths that no one else has. So it's quite nice. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Roy Dow. I graduated in 1999. I was here 5th through 8th grade. And I'm not gonna lie, I remember before coming here, I wasn't very excited. I had some unpleasant things to say to my parents on a couple car rides that I was told I can't use those words. But I remember, during new student orientation, I don't know if they still do, before school you come in for a few days, an English teacher named Miss Palmer. I never had her in a class. I never had her in class, but I remember we were doing something, whatever it was, said, you aren't disabled, you're different, and it's a difference. And it was the first time I had ever been presented with my learning challenges as not a disability, not a deficit, not a, negative, but just in a more positive light. And once she said that, I was hook, line, and sinker. I was in. And from there, just things continued to blossom. After Carroll, I went back to my public high school, to Belmont High, and had, a lot of the skills I developed here, the advocacy that people talked about, the confidence, the willingness to do a little extra work to get it done because, again, you're different, and that's just part of what it is it takes you a little longer. Really, those skills helped a lot. I went on to Wheaton College, where I graduated, where I studied history and education. I graduated there in 2007, and I'm not gonna lie, after graduating college, I needed a little time off from school. So I ran soccer camps, I coached soccer, I still do, own a couple soccer businesses. But then I went back and got my master's degree in special education from UMass Boston. I graduated a couple of years ago, and I'm currently teaching history and special education at Brookline High School. I confidently say, and it sounds like we all confidently say, without the support and the not only learning to read and all those things, but the soft skills and little things that we don't think about daily, without learning those hear from these great teachers, you know, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. So glad to be here.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Delsner. I entered Carroll, or I was there from 2nd to 4th grade. I came from Meadowbrook, and then I was here 2nd through 4th. After that, I went to the Concord Public School System. I was there through high school. I then went to Lafayette College in Pennsylvania, where I studied civil and environmental engineering. Worked as an environmental engineer for a few years, realized it wasn't for me, so I went to Northeastern for grad school, where I got my master's in computer science. So for the last 4 years, I've worked at Fidelity Investments as a software engineer, where I work a lot with machine learning and different natural language capabilities.
Thank you all. Yeah, far and wide, all sorts of disciplines. Thank you for sharing your stories, and I want you to think back about memories. Roy, you started to do that a little bit when you were thinking about your parents telling you you're going to a new school. I'd love some other perspectives, because some of our parents certainly are here as new families where their child just started this year. Many of our teachers are teaching first-year kids. So tell me a little bit about what it felt like when you heard you were coming to Carroll, if you can remember back. And just raise your hand if you want to go. Go, Sandra.
Well, so I was told, in the 2nd grade, at the end of the year, that I'd be leaving and going to a different school. And, I mean, when you're in 2nd grade, as you know, as parents, you really don't understand why your parents would possibly fathom to rip you away from your friends, because that's all that matters, right? And I definitely felt, shame that I guess that I needed to be taught in a different way. Angry at my parents. Let your kids be angry. Someday they'll turn around and thank you, just like we're doing. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into this, but I mean, public school was not a good place for us. And I think I was excited to be possibly in a place with other students where they weren't, taking me out of regular public school classes and not knowing what to do with us, putting us, just in the special needs programs. And to be with other students who, A, everyone was dyslexic, but B, they also understood that there was a plethora of other learning-based disabilities that most students had. It wasn't just dyslexia, but for most students it was dyslexia and ADD or ADHD. And that I wasn't the only, medicated student at 3rd grade. Other students were also on, Ritalin and Adderall drugs that at the time, we didn't understand and really were against, but really needed and were helpful, but not something our public school friends could relate. So yeah, definitely at first upset, but grateful very quickly once I got here and realized that, oh, we have all these other things we get to do during the day, like go outside in the woods and, run around on this beautiful campus and small classes and different learning style. It was, very quickly became obvious it was going to be worth it.
Thanks, Sonia.
Anybody else remember? Michael.
So I had a very different experience. I didn't have many friends when I left my middle school. I was constantly getting pulled out of classes. I wasn't able to have any extracurricular, so I didn't have music, I didn't have gym, I didn't have art. They always took me out and put me in this room with this woman that was not very nice to me. So my parents came to me and I didn't know I was dyslexic. I got all this testing done and I just thought I was getting tested for whatever. I came to Carroll and it was one of those things where it was a good fresh start because I didn't have any friends and I didn't like school. I hated school. So coming here was an eye-awakening moment where it's like I can have friends, I can have fun. And funny enough, about halfway through 4th grade, people started saying dyslexia. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why people were saying this. So I went home and I go, what's dyslexia? And my parents were like, oh yeah, so that's why you're going to this school. You have dyslexia. So it was.
Don't do it that way.
I agree. It was it was a big shift because it's like, oh, this is why I'm having all these issues. But it was amazing to see that transition in myself, but then also see my parents actually look at me and be happy that I was happy. So it was quite nice. Yeah. I agree. Don't do it. No.
Any other memories of way back when? I'll move on. So tell us a little bit about something at Carroll that you absolutely love being a part of. It could be your science class, it could be something like Bounders or after-school programming. And how did your involvement in those activities kind of help you as you moved on from Carroll? What do you remember as you really fondly of your experiences?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, so I think one of the fondest experience I had from Carroll was the birdhouse project in 5th grade, right? 5th grade. And that was a ton of fun and kind of interesting. It kind of foreshadowed my life in the future and the fact that it was production of building birdhouses and how we build production parts. And so it was, I really enjoyed the experience, and it had some entrepreneurial parts to it too, trying to sell them to your parents and your neighbors and friends and family and everything. So that was definitely a really fond memory, and was something that when I left Carroll, I had some woodworking skills from the wood shop, and then I went on to Proctor, and Proctor has a metal shop, so I was able to kind of graduate from woodworking to metalworking, and that got me into machining and welding and all those skills, and then that translated into becoming a mechanical engineer, going to manufacturing, and now I have a manufacturing business. So that definitely is.
There it is, all for birdhouses. Thank you, David. Awesome. Anybody else?
So similarly, the Jerry Wild's shop in the gatehouse was like a huge part of my life, and the woodworking. I remember Jerry. We must have been like 10 or 12 years old, and he had this crickety old lathe, and he was like, "I'm going to show you how to like make a baseball bat." And it's like, lean into it, and put the chisel here, and don't put your finger in there. And you just got to spend time during the school day doing these amazing things. And the Bounders program was also just like this instrumental piece of just like taking us into the woods and the climbing aspect and just like rappelling into the bomb shelter and off the top of the Storo building and just like building all of these.
Those were the days, my friends.
They've gotten better lawyers. And but like to the case of like we would building all of these like outdoor skills and these climbing skills, and I just like ran with it, and so much so that like I acquired all this gear, and I would spend the weekends still with my friends in the Newton area, and my parents would drop us off at Hammond Pond with like a rope and some slings and a bunch of harnesses, and we would be like dangling from the rocks out there. So it was like a huge part of like I feel like my identity now, and it came from that program.
Thanks, Sam.
So Sonia and I were part of Breaking Through, and I hope you guys get to see that one day.
Michael, can you explain what that was?
Okay, yeah.
People don't know what that is.
So Breaking Through is a play that Bruce Pasha and Shay Chattel wrote. We revamped it. Yeah, sorry. So they wrote this play about one girl, or one person is dyslexic in the play, and the rest are normal brain people. We have a better brain now. So the play is all about being in school and being dyslexic. And you get these scenes, like a cafeteria scene, some outside scenes, and the whole premise of it is to teach other students or other parents or other people that dyslexia has its strengths, and it has all these amazing things, but at the same time, if you're not being supported, you're going to struggle. And at the end of the play, the main character, I forget her name now, but she ends up she blossoms. And at the end of the play, you see all the strengths and you see all this amazing thing. And in the middle of the play, I believe, we list off a bunch of famous people that are dyslexic. And when people start to hear that, it shifts their brain. It's like, oh wow, I didn't realize that person was dyslexic. And you really start to see that all these famous people, very successful people, have dyslexia, but yet they've succeeded so well in their areas. So Breaking Through traveled around from 2006 to 2009, and we toured, I think, 25 schools. We would go to a middle school or a high school, and we would put on the play for them. And one moment I do remember, we were at this school, and we were in this back room, and we had to walk like about 5 minutes down to go to the bathroom. And so I walked down, and the kids are parading down into the auditorium, and one kid goes, "Why do we have to go watch these stupid dyslexics?"
Oh.
So I went back to our room where we were all kind of hanging out, and I go, "Guys, this is what they just said. We just gotta blow them away." And at the end of the play, they all started clapping and cheering, and it was amazing to see that transition, because it was a student that's our age, and they were so adamant that they didn't want to watch this because we were stupid. And at the end of the play, they really saw that we're not stupid. We're exactly like you, but we're a little bit different, like everyone's been saying. That was one of the biggest moments in the play for me, was actually transitioning a whole room of students to be like, oh my God, these kids are awesome. And Breaking Through, I hope I get to see the new one, because it's very powerful being in part of it, because I think there was like 12 or 15 of us, and most of us still talk and we still communicate, because it was every Friday. We'd be in the auditorium, in the theater, practicing, rehearsing, and we got really close, and we really got to know each other. And it was one of those moments where the connections never leave. But Carroll connections never leave. That's why we all come back. That's why there's group chats with everybody and all of that stuff. And it's really amazing to see, like, Alumni Day, when we all come back into the main gym and we all start to see each other. And our age will stop going, but the younger kids still go. And it's the biggest thing. Your kids are going to ask to go to these alumni events. They're amazing. That you really get to see each other, talk to each other, and see each other grow and succeed outside of Carroll. And that's the biggest thing, is succeeding outside of Carroll. Because Carroll, you will succeed. You will succeed at Carroll. And then you take those skills outside, and then you also will succeed.
Thanks, Michael. Any other fond memories before we move on? Kathy, I think you have one.
Oh, I was gonna say, I really enjoyed the half days on Friday we would go skiing. It really got me into skiing. I still ski today, most weekends. It also showed me that, like, the more you practice something, you learn that skill, and that you just have to put time into something, and repetitive work, and the work will pay off.
Thank you. Thank you. Alrighty, so let's talk about something under some of the categories of the benefits of Carroll. Give an example of how Carroll prepared you for high school specifically, because a lot of you were here for those years before high school and then launched to a different school for high school. So can you recall how Carroll prepared you specifically for high school? Go, Roy.
I specifically remember just being more organized than other people. When I left, I asked my parents if they'd buy 4 of the planners that we used while at Carroll. It was just like, it makes sense to me. I don't want to learn something new. Like, I'm gonna have to learn enough new stuff. Like, let's keep using that. So I think that really helped. Like people have said, the ability to advocate and identify what you need and be comfortable and confident to express that to adults was big time. And I can say now, being a high school teacher and working with not a lot, but a good amount of kids that come back to their public school from Carroll, those are traits that I still see. Like, it's relatively easy to identify who those kids are who went through Carroll, because they're just a little more on top of it, and they don't expect you to do quite as much for them, and they're willing. They ask the questions and go the extra mile. Not saying that kids that don't go to Carroll don't do that. There's a lot of great kids across the board, but it is really noticeable once they mention, I went to the Carroll school. Like, they're those traits that you're exhibiting look very, very familiar.
Coming all the way down.
So I don't want to oversimplify this. It's not all easy when you leave the Carroll school. I'd say that it takes a lot of work. Something that kids leave here is actually knowing that being different is okay, but also understanding how they learn is what's really important. It takes me 10 times at least longer to read something than other kids. And just understanding that that's okay was a big part of being successful in high school. But that didn't mean it was easier for me. It just meant, hey, I just have to understand that that's what it takes. Over the years, though, I've learned that if I read something I'm really interested in, I can read it almost as fast as somebody else can, but I can understand it far greater than those folks. As parents, I would say, and I do have a child that's also in the Carroll School now, so it's kind of generational, I guess, that advocating not just for themselves, but you helping to figure out their superpowers, sometimes we call it. There are things that dyslexic folks can do better than other people can. And I feel sad for those other people that they can't do it as well as us. There's a lot of things we can't do very well, and it's just understanding how we navigate life with those situations, and that's what makes it okay. I will also say that I'd encourage kids to try things many, many times. Something that was big for me to get over was that if I tried to read something or to do something right away, I would fail miserably, and other kids would laugh. And having that understanding and starting to learn to be able to laugh at myself was something that was helpful. But I knew over time that if I did it 6 or 10 times, I was doing it like everybody else. And for a bunch of things, after a dozen times, I would do it far greater than that because I understood, much like the example somebody said, that we look at a room in a 3D way, is we do look at things at all different angles. So with a little time and a little practice, kids are going to do very, very well, but it takes work. So I encourage them, they're going to get down at times, just keep being in their corner and cheering for them, and that will be the big difference maker.
Thank you. Any other recollections of how Carroll prepared for high school?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that as well. I think actually for me, the big thing wasn't necessarily how Carroll prepared me, but just how Carroll helped me find the right high school to kind of continue that support as well. Kind of cheated because our family knows Steve Wilkins quite well, and Steve Wilkins was the head of school at Proctor and then the head of school at Carroll when I was here, and he was immediately able to recognize that I'd be a good fit for Proctor, so he lined it up pretty nicely, and it was definitely very true.
Renee, you better go to town on that.
So yeah, when I was Proctor had good learning skills, and I had someone who I met with every day during a class period, and then throughout high school kind of got weaned off that and met with them a couple times a week, and then had them kind of in the background, and I could drop in there, but we didn't have any scheduled time with them by the time I was like a senior. And then when I was at college, I didn't have any support, but high school allowed me to do that kind of transition between Carroll, where everyone was very supportive of dyslexic students, to going to a high school that was able to give me that support too, and help me with the advocation when it comes to standardized testing and getting extra time. I took standardized tests like SATs with my learning skills teacher. Took them on the weekends over 2 days, Saturdays and Sundays, and had double time and computer and ability to use calculator, have her read me questions, which was pretty helpful by the 3rd hour. And yeah, so that was kind of the big help. Wasn't necessarily the amount of support Carroll gave me to line me up for high school, but the support that got kind of continued through that more in preparation for college.
Thanks, David. Any others before we move on? Alrighty. So you've all touched on this a little bit, but I want to know, how has Carroll affected your life or changed how you think about yourself? If you think about how you were thinking about who you were as a learner and a human before coming to Carroll, and how's Carroll impacted that? Michael, go ahead.
So I talked about math class before. So I found out math was my strong suit. Sadly, I got a concussion and kind of lost that skill, so we'll talk about that a different time or a different day. But so Carroll, you're able to find your strength. Like, I think it was forget your name, the guy on the end, he said that you find your superpower. And that's what Carroll does give you. They allow you to find your superpower, and you're able to own that superpower and feel very confident in that, and then that brings confidence out elsewhere. So like reading in the classroom was my worst, that I was scared to death of that. So I would actually flip the pages and read what I was supposed to read first so that I could practice it. And the teachers at Carroll would catch you. And it's not that they don't want you to prepare yourself, but they want you to be able to read in the moment without practicing the 3 pages that you're supposed to read. So it's amazing to focus and then try to bring that confidence from your superpower into having to read in the classroom or having to spell in the classroom. And I know when we were just about leaving, they started to bring in this program on the computer. And the computer would read to you, but you could also read it. And then you could make notes on it and things like that. So the softwares that Carroll integrates into the learning, a lot of them you can actually get outside. So when I graduated Carroll, we actually bought Kurzweil, which I believe you guys still use. And Kurzweil is an amazing software. I used it all the way up through college. And it's something that you can actually write your essays in, and it will read it back to you. So a lot of, actually everyone, they'll put double words in there, and we don't read that double word. We just skip over it because our brain didn't want it there, so we don't read it. Kurzweil reads it to you, and it's like, whoa, that sounded wrong. And then you're able to use these softwares to become a superhero in the things that you are weak in. So a lot of the softwares, I would tell you guys to look into them, because some of the high schools will have them, some of the colleges will have them, but it's really amazing when you're able to have it yourself. And a lot of high schools and colleges will put it on your computer, and they put like a little time frame on it. But when you buy the software, it's really, really amazing because it's yours, you're able to manipulate it, and that helps you through high school and college as well.
Yeah.
I would say, I know I'm almost forgetting the original question, but I think it was something related to it. It really influenced my work ethic. I think after leaving Carroll, I was like, okay, it's going to take me a little bit longer to understand something, but that's okay. I'm just going to work hard, take the time, meet with a teacher. Like when I was in high school, I had no problem because I knew I would learn better in a smaller setting, and trying just to understand what I don't know and taking the time to work through something and not getting frustrated or sad that if I did bad on the test, but being like, okay, this is like a challenge to work harder. And I think it really shaped who I am today.
That was exactly the answer to the question. I've forgotten it myself. Okay, so I'm going to give you a long-winded question, and it will probably remind you of some of our messages that we've used over the years. So if you all remember, we always had banners on our gymnasiums or on our buildings. And one of them used to say, people with dyslexia view the world differently. Isn't the world lucky they do? And this speaks to the dyslexic advantage, as we all know. And another phrase we've adopted is great minds think differently. Okay, so you've answered some of this, but I'd love to have a more, even more discreet sort of targeted answer about how you think differently has benefited you.
So this just popped into my head. I would say that kids with dyslexia thrive in an unscripted world. So in situations that aren't cookie cutter, that's really where folks with dyslexia come through. And I heard something unusual in the last year that I think LinkedIn has actually put dyslexia as a skill. I'm not sure how many, I haven't seen it in a job listing yet for folks looking for people with dyslexia, but that's the type of, one of the superpowers that they have. And that's definitely, I would say, helps people.
Great, thank you. Roy, you want to go?
Sure. The two that come to mind are, I think, a confidence, not, necessarily overtly or like in your face sort of confidence, but the example I was just thinking of is when every year I tell the kids I'm dyslexic, and I say, hey, if you see I write something, misspell something on the board, like you can say something, it's okay, like, it's gonna happen. I know that before I came to Carroll that I wouldn't have had the confidence. I was to own my difference or advantage, however you want to say it, because before I was coming here, I was avoiding school, and afterwards I wasn't avoiding it quite as much. And I think the other superpower or skill is just slowing down and trying to understand, make sure you understand things before you move on. In my day-to-day, I ask so many questions just because I want to make sure I understand it correctly. I want to, make sure I can give the best answer. I want to make sure I can do it correctly. And it's a little thing, having the confidence to ask a question and the comfort to ask a question, because there's so many times you can just want to, especially kids just blow by like, oh, I don't get it, whatever. Like, someone will tell me what to do or I'll figure it out later. But that ability to ask a question is so, I personally think, important and key to project that confidence, but also to know that it's okay that you don't know the answers.
Thanks, Roy. Any other thoughts about how being dyslexia has just helped you to be successful, thinking differently, how that has impacted you in any way? Go, Sam, go.
I think the big piece is that there is it magnifies the things that you struggle with, and when you can really sort of hone in on the things that you struggle with and tweak those, and it really and then leverage the things that you're good at to compensate for the things that you struggle with. And it's just sort of strategy upon strategy of and I look at this of my writing would never be, it takes me so long to write. So it's much more of having a phone call or having a personal interaction, and you really just sort of learn how to leverage your skills and the things that you are good at, because you're really aware of the things and the areas that you struggle.
Thanks, Dan. All right, just a couple more questions, and then I want you all to be able to ask some questions yourselves. So, what advice would you give to current students or parents? Go, Sonia.
It's almost like I wish my parents were sitting here so I could unpack all this with them. But
therapy session.
Yeah, seriously. But my parents did not think I was going to get accepted to business school. And that was difficult, but I kind of always pushed back, kind of back off, I've got it type of thing. I think what they focused on the most was the letter grade that comes out, which, yes, is important to a certain extent. But, my advice to kind of, students and parents is that your letter grade actually does not really matter in the long run. Nobody, in job applications after you graduate, nobody ever again asks you what your GPA was. Why they don't tell you that during college, I have no idea. Unless you're maybe studying to be a lawyer or a doctor and you have to take further testing, that's, a different story. But focusing more on asking, your students, well, not why did you get a C or a B on this, but what did you learn in this class today? And do you understand this? Or can I help you to understand this better in some way that, works for you, rather than, well, your grades should be better, because it really is more important that your student understands something rather than getting the grade. And I'm sure that other people can agree with this, but my motto in college was C's get degrees, because it does not matter. And I passed every class. I have a BSBA in business. I had to take classes way too complicated for my brain, such as lots of accounting, econ, stats, stuff I really did not care about, but was required to do. And I know so much more about it today. But I do think my parents, they caught on after I got accepted to business school, and once the SATs were over, that it didn't matter if I was getting C's. It mattered if, you know, I was actually comprehending, because testing, it does not mean your kids don't know what the material is they're being tested on. We just, you know, a lot of the things is timing on tests too, that we do not have the time to. I can't tell you how many times during college or even on the SATs I had to be like, oh, I just wish I could ask the teacher to write this question in a different way, because I don't understand what it's asking, but I feel very confident about the material. So yeah, that's my advice. It's just like, I almost wish I had the harsh parent that at the dinner table every night was like, tell me what you learned today, explain this theory or whatever to me, because, you know, I think that's how I learn rather than testing.
Thank you, Sonia. David.
Yeah, I can also speak kind of leaning on that. I would just say, like, lean into the other things that they're interested in or passionate about. I definitely wish, I was super thankful for having the opportunity to get into things like woodworking and metal shop while at school. But I wish I got access to those things even earlier. It's kind of interesting. I think at the beginning you mentioned something about like the typical path, or people might say like, hey, your student's never going to go to college, or you should look for different paths. I'm honestly somewhat jealous of some of the students that get to do things like go to technical high schools as well. Kind of exciting, last summer we've started taking on co-ops from Minuteman High School, and one of them was a Carroll student before. And yeah, I was definitely very jealous of them. And so I think, one, giving them access to lean into the things, especially the kind of interests that can lead to a career, and you know, whether that's making stuff or programming or video games or even sports and stuff like that too. Giving them the opportunity to kind of explore those is a great thing. And then I would also say, similarly, when we hire, we rarely look at grades, or even whether they went to college. We have a lot of people with similar titles, manufacturing engineers, and some of them went to high school, or some of them went to college, some didn't, and there's basically no pay discrepancy between them. We look far more at the hard skills, experience in manufacturing, their ability to problem solve, ability to work hard, and stuff like that, than a GPA or even what school they went to. So.
Thanks, David. Any other?
Can I add one thing? I'd
Please.
be remiss if I didn't. One thing so my closest friend still is someone I went to Carroll with, Greg O'Brien. We only went to school together for 4 years. And one thing that we talk about a lot that was really important was our parents were willing to drive us back and forth. You know, while we were in school, you know, I grew up in Belmont, he grew up in Newton, so it wasn't like, you know, driving up to too far, but just both our sets of parents were willing to drive us back and forth to see each other. We had another friend who lived in Brookline, so there was like a little triangle there. We'd go back and forth, you know, on the weekends and the summers. And then after Carroll, he went up to Proctor. I went to my public school, and we were constantly talking, you know, on the phone, emailing, and then any break we had a chance, any school break we had a chance to spend together. You know, our parents were, no matter what time it was, be like, all right, yep, we'll drive you over. Sure, you want to go? Let's go. And then even after you know, high school, that helped keep us in touch throughout college. When he went out to Colorado and I stayed local, there's definitely a theme here of me not being very adventurous and him being adventurous. But you know, that was something like, you know, and it's 20 some odd years later, almost 30 years of friendship, is a lot of it stuck because, one, the Carroll connection and having this unique perspective that me and my other buddies don't have together. But a lot of it was our parents willing to go the extra mile and you know, driving before they had fun podcasts to listen to and everything. So that was one just little nugget I'd feel bad if I didn't include there.
So make sure you make play dates happen. Is that what you're saying? I think that's what you're saying.
Yes, and older kid play dates.
Yeah. Thanks, Roy. All right, so final question from me, and I'd love to hear from all of you. You've all articulated so much about Carroll and what it has meant to you. If you were asked to describe Carroll in just a word or phrase, what would that be?
I would call it an accelerant, much that starts a fire and keeps it going. What Carroll did for me was really get me going and keeps me going.
Thank you.
Flexible.
And I don't know if I thought of one yet. I don't know. Honestly, the first word that came to my mind was just fun. I feel like I really enjoyed Carroll. I looked over there and saw the big mats, and I reminisced about mat ball. So I definitely also remember it being a really fun experience as well.
Thank you, David.
Supportive.
You find a family. Carroll's a family.
Life-changing. My first grade teacher told my parents I wouldn't graduate high school, and I did. I graduated college, and I got a master's degree, so without this place, changing my life, it wouldn't have happened.
And I will say rewarding.
Thank you. So thoughtful. All right. So, any questions from you all that you want to ask to a particular one of our esteemed guests, or just in general? Anything on your mind? Yeah.
If I may, so my daughter is in 4th grade, and it's our first year here at Carroll. And in 3rd grade, she used to say things like, "I'm the dumbest one," and "this is too hard." And I would love to say that magically all of that has disappeared, but she seems to now recognize her own intelligence and worth. But she still says things like, "What job can I have that doesn't require college?" You know? So I would love to hear any of you comment on how do you respond to that? Because sure, college may not be for her, but I don't want her to think that she couldn't do it.
Yeah, I would say just quickly, the fun jobs are the ones we get to do. We don't do the boring like office jobs, staring at computers. We get to make parts for cars and bake and do cool stuff. So the fun ones are the ones that dyslexic people do.
I think it's natural. She's it's a hard age to comprehend all this. I will say I think it took into my truly adult life to really understand how I need to learn, and what it I still have to convince myself every day. Okay, you're allowed to bake bread as a career, and serve people and make people happy rather than sitting at a desk doing something you don't want to do because that's what people think you're supposed to do. And I will say that I'm dealing now in the food world that I have to disclose that I don't have a culinary degree, and I'm self-taught, which is the only thing I have ever taught myself how to do, I'd say, is baking. And that I'm getting from employers that they prefer people who are self-taught. And that is not to discourage your students from going to college or even high school, but not everyone has to go to college and high school. It doesn't work for everyone. Gap years should be encouraged. People should be encouraged to do what's best for themselves and their brain. And, I think we're it's driven into a lot of us that we're supposed to live this very conventional life, and that's just not how our brains work, and that's okay. We need people in this world to do every single job. And someday she'll look back and understand, what she needs, but it'll take a little bit.
I think all of us, because I know I heard it a couple places, we said anything. Dyslexia isn't a weakness, it's a strength. And I think Carroll eventually will show her right. She will eventually see that through Carroll, because Carroll, it pushes you in the areas that you're weak, and it allows you to excel in the areas that you're strong. So in the weaknesses, she will grow and she will get there. And it's amazing to see your first year versus your last year. That's the biggest shift, is once you graduate, you're like, whoa, I couldn't read before, I couldn't spell before. And that's the biggest shift, is seeing that. And personally, 7th grade was a big shift for me, and that's where I was like, I am smart, I can do this. And it's an amazing thing once that shift happens, which Carroll always definitely helps with that.
2 things I would add. One is, you're a kid. Go out and play. Find your passions. Go have fun. Finding a job is miles down the road. And the second thing is I would pull up a list of all the people that have dyslexia, you know, all the famous people that we've heard about. And they found their passions, and over time she'll find her passion. But she should feel comfortable that there's a lot of different options for her out there.
And maybe share the fact sheet that it's on the table there. Bring that home to her. Tell her what you did this afternoon and what you heard. Lots of story to tell there. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Along the same lines, social emotional piece of all of this, I've had a hard time with my son convincing him that dyslexic is an advantage. And I'm wondering if you can remember back to the time when you were struggling with that question yourself. If there's anything helpful, you would have told yourself.
We could talk to that. Because it can come across as, I mean, when you're struggling with something and somebody tells you that it's an advantage, you know, you can hear it as condescending. You can hear it as like, none of this is felt like an advantage. And I think that like it is time, and really like leaning into the things that your kids are good at. And, you know, school, you know, you might never love school, but like if you come to a place where like you've got belonging and people that care about you and really good relationships, I feel like that's where you can start to sort of like leverage like the dyslexic advantage that comes out of Carroll. But I think so much of it was, I think my folks gave every interest that I had. They like poured their heart into what it was at the time. And through those moments of like finding those other things that wasn't like, you know, reading and writing, like that's how they sort of like leverage like, oh, you can like take these things apart and put them back together, you're really good in the woods, you're really active, just like really, really leaning into those strengths and those skills.
Thanks, Tim. All right, more questions.
So first of all, thank you so much. I feel like I could cry, honestly, listening to everybody talk, so thank you. This is kind of more of a technical question. So I have a second grader. This is her first year at Carroll. And the like boring desk jobs that you guys are talking about, I'm a lawyer, my husband's a lawyer, like we like get paid to read a lot of words, that's it. So dyslexia for me is it's just very foreign. And when my daughter talks about all the time, like she's desperate to learn how to read and she's dying to learn how to read. Like, why won't she read? She'll take books and like put them on her head because she's like, if they're there, maybe it will sink in. And I think it's going to be a while, but she will ask us, like, when will I learn to read? And she thinks maybe she'll just wake up one morning and just start reading. And I would just love to hear from your experiences, like, how did that process start in your brain? And also, you know, sort of what would you say about like the when? Because we just keep saying, you know, it's going to take time, but we trust you'll get there. But I'm just wondering, like, honestly, inside your brains, like, how did that occur?
Wow, you're not going to like this answer. I am surprised I can communicate, honestly. My wife is an English teacher, and she sees the world very, very differently than I do. We have a joke, you know, she says apple, but I hear orange, and it is no joke. We hear different words. It means different things to us. I wish I loved reading. I wish I loved picking up books and reading stories. That's not for me. I don't have the appreciation that you do, or you know, would have for that. So I need to find my excitement in other ways, and she might be that way. So rather than encouraging her to find the passion of reading, you might want to try some other things to help her find passions in other ways. And I know that might not be the answer you're looking for.
And because I thought, when you sent those questions, I thought a lot about this, like the love of reading. Like, I'll never have a love of reading. Like, I find it like laborious and really, really difficult. But that doesn't mean that like there aren't like a million books out there that I've like read that I love, that are like on my shelf that I've read multiple times. It's just not, I find that like really, really difficult, but like we shouldn't, I don't know, like don't, the love of reading is not the same as like not having a love of knowledge. And I think like that's a really kind of like, I don't know, it took me a while to figure that out.
Sorry, I didn't want to jump in. You might find that she likes to write. And that's something dyslexic people can do, is really look at things from very, very different directions. So while she may not be a reader, she could be a writer. Now, what she writes might not be beautiful from the first time it's written. You have to do some editing that goes as part of that. But she might be able to do the other end of the book. So.
Yes, Enrico. I love reading, but I didn't until after I left, probably midway through college, once I realized I liked reading for reading what I wanted to read, not what I was forced to read. But it sounds like she has the passion's there. It's just Carol's going to teach her how to read. That's what she needs, is to be taught how to read. Because when we got here in the 3rd grade, could not read yet. I don't think, not well. And I very vividly remember the specific skills we were taught in 3rd and 4th grade. I think we each had like some kind of reading words, writing hour of the week or something privately. Yeah, and anyway.
Tutor?
Something like tutor. But I remember like we were taught very specifically how to break down a word. Yeah, phonograms. And that like covering the next line until you can read the line after that, and yeah, and that it's all about how someone is going to teach her something that's going to click. She's correct. She's going to wake up and it's going to click, and maybe she's going to love reading, especially because she has the example of the two of you who love reading. I will say, a shock to my parents, they did not think I could do it, but in the 8th grade or 7th grade, I learned how to read Hebrew. And I found a teacher, a very specific teacher, who, took each Hebrew letter, and each one of them had their own story and sound and name so that it worked for my brain. I think she only took on students with learning-based disabilities, and this was aside, obviously, from the Carroll School. They don't teach Hebrew, as far as I'm aware. But I wanted to get bat mitzvah, and so I had to learn Hebrew to do that, and that seemed like a very foreign concept at the time to my parents, to teach a dyslexic how to read a language with entirely different symbols. But it was all about the way it was taught to me, and I can still think about those ways and read Hebrew.
So to speak directly to you, I'm in a $16 million litigation, so I have to read, I think the last document was like 375 pages. We can do it. It takes us a hell of a lot of time. It took me like 10 hours to read it, but we can do it. And it's breaking it down like those, covering up the lines. I know back in the day they actually had these rulers, and the ruler had a little bump on the top, and you would put the bump on the line you were reading, and you would move it down by one, move it down the next one. I do that on Adobe, and it's amazing how we can find things that other people can't find. And it's that small change in our brain that we can actually find those small differences that can put holes in their oppositions or their summary judgments. And it's amazing to help a lawyer, and I have no lawyer expertise at all. I barely know any law, but reading it through and then talking to the lawyer about it or talking to you about it, you're able to see things and read things differently than you might be able to do. And that's helped the lawyers I'm working with right now, and it's amazing. They don't know I'm dyslexic, but they ask, like, why did it take you so long? Or like, how did you find that? And it's just kind of like, well, I was just reading it differently. And it's not something I hide from them, but it's not something, if we were working on the case together, like I was a lawyer, I would definitely tell them. But it's amazing we can do it. It does take a long time, but we can do it, absolutely. And the softwares that I was talking about, those are massively helpful, for sure.
Yeah, I was also actually going to lean on that as well, specifically about being a lawyer. And I guess it really depends on what type of lawyer you are, but for the most part, I would assume that the core skill to be a good lawyer is to be a good problem solver. and that's a great skill that dyslexic people have. I too have dealt with far too many lawyers for the past 6 months, either on the property side, dealing with neighbors and building new buildings, and dealing with towns and employment law and this and the next thing. And regularly I'll be talking with them, and there'll be an issue, and I'll be reading the same zoning bylaws, and I'll find a hole in the laws or something that they didn't think outside, where I'm like, oh, if we call the business slightly different, then I think this is good. And that's happened like multiple times. So I would also say there is quite a dyslexic advantage, and I would say, one, Carroll teaches the skills if someone dyslexic did want to become a lawyer, to be able to read and slog through the paralegal phase, and then do very well, and then have their own paralegals to do the reading for them. And then they get to do just the fun part of problem solving.
Go ahead,
sorry.
Roy. Go ahead.
I can say I didn't really enjoy reading until I was 25, and I'm 38 now, and I'm finally like trying to read a book over 350 pages. So it can take a while. I mean, I think the thing that stuck for me is, like, I remember in 8th grade I got put in a specific English class, and I looked around at my peers, and I was like, all right, something that I'm doing is picking up and changing, because I wasn't in the English class with these guys last year, and they were all together. You know, I think one thing to keep in mind, and we've all kind of alluded to it, is it takes a lot of energy to do the work. Like, we want to do the work. Like, your kid will want to do the work, and we'll do it, and try hard and everything, but that takes a lot of energy. Like, I didn't go back to grad school until I was 29, because I was just zapped from, you know, having to spend that extra time, which is what I needed to do, and we do it, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but it takes a lot of energy. So I think, you know, knowing that and just getting by takes a lot, and then as you get older, learning how to do that little extra. And then you turn 38 and you realize I can read a book over 350 pages for pleasure. You know, is where it goes. So it takes time. There might not be an aha moment, but there's moments where you look back on it. You know, Monday morning quarterback it, and you're like, oh, yeah, I started doing more. Oh, I can take this next step.
Thank you. One more question to the group, and then we'll just break out, and certainly informally can continue on. Karen, you had one more question, yeah?
Yeah, this is kind of a follow-on. Like, my son's in 5th grade, and he's been at Carroll for a couple of years, and he's bought into the community, feels so much better about himself. He still really doesn't want to do the reading homework and the writing homework, and we're leaning into the dyslexic advantages and everything, but it's still I try to not be like, you have to become functionally literate, life not being able to read and write. You have to work on it, but that's been a hard thing for him to absorb. So do you have any advice that I know Carroll works on that a lot with the kids, but from the parent side, being supportive, but also if there was anything that led to the motivation to do the hard work on the stuff that's hard, as opposed to just being I'm awesome just at all these other things. All ears for advice or experiences.
So we actually bought a lot of the stuff that Carroll had, like the phonograms, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, did I really just screw that up? So there's phonogram cards, and so me and my mother would actually use the phonogram cards, and she'd hold them up and kind of question me on them. And still to this day, I can probably list the eight combinations of A, the sound of A. And when it gets so when it gets
really useful in life.
It really is. It's amazing. You can go to a party and be like, hey, you know, there's A sounds of A. So it's in E, there's 8 of them, and so that really helps. And it's when you're able to break down a word that's 13 letters long, and you're able to break that up into smaller chunks. And that's what me and my mother would do. We would actually cut the word up, and we would and I'm still to this day, like I said, 10 hours to read crazy amount of pages. You're able to chunk out the words. Instead of seeing this 13-letter word, you're seeing 5 little chunks of the word, and then you're able to slowly sound that out. And I believe I learned this at Carroll. You can like point to, you circle letters and you point to the other things, and okay, I'm not losing my mind. So that really helps, is learning how to break up the word, because once you can break up the word, you can read the word. And that, for me, once I was able to break up the word, that's when I was able to start successfully reading. And then when you're writing, you do the same thing. You break the word up in your brain. You sound it out, and then you write down what you think it is, and then eventually, you're typing it, and then the auto corrects it, and you're like, oh, that's how you spell it. And it slowly comes, and you don't have to spell the word correctly. I mean, I still to this day, I'll send lawyers that make crazy amount of money, and the whole thing isn't spelled right. They don't care. It gets the point across. But it's when you are writing an essay or something like that, the spell check helps, and then breaking out that word really, really helps. And I don't think we bought the cards. I think we printed them out on carbon paper, and then we cut them out. So that's what we did. And then we used that, and on the back of it, there'd be like a little example of that word that my mother would see, so that she could be like, well, what about this word? It's like, oh, yeah.
Can I reframe Karen's question? So when you all, if you could remember back when you were in 5th grade, because most of you, I think, were with us in 5th grade, did you really like to do your reading and your writing homework?
No. And the other piece to this is that your kids now come to a school where like they can't hide, and they can't sort of sit in the back and fake their way through it, because they're like so smart and so articulate and can talk their way at anything. Like you can't do that here. And the days are really long, and the classes are like really methodical at targeting the things that you need support and help with, and like that's exhausting for your kids. And it gets, in school, I go back to saying this, that we all ended up here not because school was super easy. And Carroll gives you these tools to move on and to go from this lower school to wherever next, to middle school, to high school, and really to sort of figure out what it is that you want to do, and be successful with it. But it's I guess I don't have an answer, but except it's, I imagine, super hard.
Yeah, I hated the reading homework. But one thing, I think a huge part of it is finding something that they might enjoy reading. I read a lot when I was younger. Betty and Veronica, that was a huge help, cartoons. And I even remember, I was after Carroll when I was in middle school, I read Prep, which is completely inappropriate for a middle schooler to be reading, but my mom was just read anything, anything. But yeah, just find, I know Harry Potter was a little too, complicated for me, which is too bad, but because I listened to it instead of reading it, but just finding something, comic books, was great for me.
I just add that reading is one of those things that you get better with time. So encouraging them to read as much as they can is definitely going to help. Kids are always going to hate doing schoolwork, especially dyslexic ones that have challenges reading. I'm going to say this, hopefully, as being a parent, hopefully it's short-lived that they're going to be in your house for a very long time.
He's only in 5th grade.
You have a limited number of years to just keep encouraging them and try different things, whether it's the time of day. I know at the end of the day it's really hard to do homework because they're tired. Aside from trying different things different times of day or after a snack or before they play the Xbox, and see how fast they get their work done, it's just going to be a tough few years for parents to be on their side, but it gets easier as they learn the tricks and how to get the work done, as opposed to just arguing about it and procrastinating.
I would have killed my parents if they did what Mike's parents did. Tried to teach me at home what they were teaching me here. Not to discredit your parents, it's great that you put up with them. But it's really about finding their strengths and weaknesses, because in 5th grade, they're not really going to want to ever do the reading homework. But then maybe in 6th grade, their friends start talking about Harry Potter, and they want to read Harry Potter too, and like be able to connect on that. And that for them to read it at that age, it might be listening to it on an audiobook, which is still super helpful for me. And then I think come like 7th and 8th grade, I felt motivated to become a better reader, because I think by then, I don't know, maybe it happens earlier, I can't remember, you're kind of broken into classes based on your reading ability. And I remember that, you know, the super smart kids were reading like The Lord of Flies and like all these books that I was not in their class, but I wanted to be reading. I was like, I don't know what that's about. It sounds intense and cool. And it was motivating for me to learn how to read better and move up in the class system. And also, you know, once they're in, you start talking about high schools, and if they're applying to like, you know, Proctor and Beaver and all those schools where they're either tested to get in, they'll, you know, find motivation if they really want to go to those schools. But 5th grade is a hard year to find motivation to read. I can understand that.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember much about how my mom got me to read and do homework in middle school. Honestly, I feel like I was quite food motivated, so that was probably a big part of it. But for high school, and this continues for me now, going to boarding school, peer pressure works really well for me. If people around me who are my age are also doing the same homework, it helps a lot. If we have dedicated study hall and I'm in a dorm with other students my age, and they're all doing their work, I'm much more likely to get my work done and realize I should be focused, or have the opportunity to go to the library to study and stuff like that as well. And I found that to be true even after college as well. I found myself to be much better at getting stuff done when I had employees and other people in the office who, you know, could kind of catch me if I was slacking or getting distracted or something like that. So at least if the opportunity for boarding school is on the tables, at least that was a big perk of it for me, was more just having other people around me, motivating me, hearing about them, caring about SATs and being like, oh yeah, I guess I should care about those too, and was definitely a big influence on me.
Thank you so much. Thank you all of you.
Thanks, Sue, moderator extraordinaire. I was realizing when I was sitting there that I didn't tell you what the title of this afternoon was, the official title, because it's important. This afternoon was titled the Steve Wilkins Speaker Series event. And this event was named for my mentor and predecessor, Steve Wilkins. We've heard a little bit about him today. And it used to be that Steve would always bring, very often, very well-accomplished neuroscientists, and usually one person to come and speak to our teachers and our families. And I thought, well, let's do it a little differently this year. What would be most helpful for our families and teachers to hear? And so we made a really strategic choice to invite alum to share their stories in this way. But I wanted to make sure you had the technical name of this afternoon's talk. So, Dave, and Sam, and David, and Sonia, and Mike, and Roy, and Kathy, thank you. It was awesome. So I just want to point out also very explicitly how you're giving in this moment. We talk a lot about our culture of giving here at Carroll. Certainly you heard a lot of stories of places where they felt like they belonged when they were here. And we talk about giving in terms of time and advocacy. So for those of you who had to listen to me this morning, know that this is an example of what I was talking about in terms of how people give to our community, right? Not everybody wants to get up and be vulnerable and talk about their stories. So we see that, we appreciate that. And I think as evidenced by their lived experiences and what they're doing in their day-to-day lives, it's all different. and all great. Right? So with that, we'd encourage you to hang around and talk to our speakers and make connections. Thank you for being here.